All right, we're back on this right here. Let me go back to the video here. Do apologize, everyone, for the technical difficulties that we are experiencing today. It's just one of those days, Viviana. It's just one of those days. Well,
I
given
feel it.
right. Um, given the last article that we read, let me ask you something. What specific issues affecting the Latinx community would you say you'd like to see any of these candidates address?
I definitely need them to talk about the detention centers.
Gotcha.
I think it's ridiculous that it's been this long and it hasn't been fully addressed.
Hmm. 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 Among other things, the detention centers. Anything else you think that they should really be um, um, addressing a lot more seriously?
I guess the problem with the concept of blocks, though, and I really don't like it because even in this article alone, you're talking about how, depending on where you're from, um, like Latinx blocks, like they lean Republican, they lean Democrat, they lean progressive. They're just such a wide spectrum. So to say there's just one key thing that's gonna get you this voting block is just not true.
Gotcha.
Um, and even right now, like there's a lot of folks who are really angry at Biden,
Yeah.
who are Democrats on paper, who don't want to vote for him because throughout the entire primary season, they were protesting his participation in detention centers.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the fact that he hasn't voiced that, like, is it or has addressed it on the stage. Like you can try to pretend and make it go away or shame people into voting for you because you're the better of the two evils. But that's not an efficient way of campaigning towards people who are apathetic.
I agree. I agree. Quick question. What more could either party or candidate do to attract more younger voters? And the reason I ask that is because a lot of the folks that I see out, they're 30 and up, who tend to be more politically involved, who tend to do a lot of the campaigning that I've been seeing. Um, Young people have a lot of issues that are directly addressing them, like education, healthcare, juvenile justice. But yeah, what could either candidate do to attract more of the younger voters?
Even with that, I think that putting the full on weight on young voters and saying that it's their fault for not turning it out is also like diminishing of this much bigger problem when we talk about how great of a job we do in teaching civic engagement in high schools, right? And the barriers for first generation voters in particular to get engaged with, like having enough points of entry for them, right? Um, I'm the youngest of 9 and the first to go to college in my family, and I was the ripple effect in my family that pushed everybody else to get registered to vote. But I've been consciously trying to create that culture within my family. Um, and I didn't vote for the first 2 elections that I could have, um, because I was working through my own political apathy on my own and learning the bureaucracy system on my own. So I think if we put a greater emphasis on how we have these conversations, not just every 4 or 2 years when we're supposed to vote, but really letting people know, like, this is what your ballot looks like.
Right.
Something as simple and basic as that.
Right.
These are the things that will disqualify your ballot because we have people who turn out, and even then, oh, your signatures isn't match the signature we have. It's not going to count. So, like, voter suppression is very real, and I think that young people experience it at extreme levels. So when we see the statistics and we say like, oh, young people aren't voting enough, well, they're not also telling you that on my campus, when we finally had a voting pool available on campus, we had people waiting in line for 5 hours just to cast a ballot. And so if I'm trying to push you, encourage you to show up, and then you do show up and you're met with all this red tape, I'm not going to get the outcome that I want, right? And the earnestness is not fully on me for that. So I think it's a whole host of things. I think it's education. I think it's removing some of those barriers. My home state of California is doing some of that, where this year on the ballot, youth who are 17 that are going to turn 18 when election in the primary, or I believe in the general elections are going to happen, can register early so that way they're good to go when that time comes.
Okay.
And it's little stuff like that, right, that we can do across the country to make it easier. We can make election day a holiday.
Yeah.
Where all these barriers that we just discussed in this article are completely removed. But it takes investing in that, right? And I think that sometimes the powers that be would not benefit from more people turning up. And they benefit from these narratives of like, well, it's your fault for not showing up and not knowing better. That we need to work on undoing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree with you. I was reading an article that was talking about the young vote, Viviana, where they were talking about how less than half of 18 to 29-year-old eligible voters don't vote, and how ever since 1972, when 18-year-olds got the legal right to be able to vote, that the number has steady declined ever since then over the years. And so, I would always like when Bernie Sanders was running, we saw the energy and we saw the support that young voters gave him. And honestly, in my lifetime, that was the first time I saw young folks so energized behind a candidate. But when uh, we saw Hillary and the DNC take over things, that enthusiasm went away. Young folks said, nope, that's not who we wanted. We did not want Hillary. We wanted Bernie. Bernie's not going to be the guy. Okay, you're not going to get our votes. And that's a theme I've seen not just with young people for this election. It's really a lot of folks. They're like they want something in exchange for the vote, and a lot of young people I've talked to, they just don't see how these candidates are really serving the people. You know, they don't feel that the candidates are genuine. They don't feel that they're honest, and they don't feel that they're truly going to do anything real impactful, to change the conditions, the conditions in their neighborhoods, their communities, and in their families. So I do understand, the lack of motivation, and I personally have always felt that the parties need to do a better job at truly addressing people, not just pandering. Don't just pander like they do with the black vote. Put hot sauce in your purse and bullshit like that. But that's just we need policy, not pandering. So, another question for you: what role, as we were reading, as it was mentioned in that article, what role do you think, Viviana, does misinformation about either candidate plays in the decision the Latinx community makes in deciding who to vote for? Misinformation. What role is that playing, do you think?
Oh, I think it's huge. And I think even going back to your comment about like, since voting age being switched over to 18, we've seen a decline. I'd be interested to also study what happened during that time. Were there new barriers that were introduced? Because I feel like anytime we get one step forward, there's plenty of other things working against us to again suppress the vote.
Yeah.
And I think there's plenty of groups that benefit, not even from you voting for their candidate, but for you just not showing up at all, right? And I think even this level of emphasis that we place on the presidency in particular, when there's so many more important races down the ballot, is also a point of disenfranchisement, because then you're looking at the president, if he's not your ideal candidate, it's all the boxes, you're just like, no, I'm not, I'm done. And you can't, because I have to vote for judges in my ballot this year. And that's going to impact my community so much more than this distant figurehead. But I guess that's my point though, where it's like, if you don't know that, and if you're only ever promoted vote, vote, vote when we're talking about a president, again, it's going to be a lot harder to get you to understand that Congress is like the voting body that's going to create the laws that's going to impact even basic things like what are your kids going to need in school?
Right. Right.
What are they going to be taught? How are they going to be taught? And if those are things that matter to you, then who's your state representative? Um, and I think that that's my answer to the folks who feel little motivation to showing up. It's like, are you creating the world you want to exist in? And if you're upset with your representatives, like your protest vote, you know, you have your right to do that. But what else are you doing after that? Are you showing up in the streets with us? Are you going down at town halls? Are you showing up at city councils? Are you writing emails to your representatives? Because if you're not doing all these other things, um, you voting is your bare minimum. Like, here's just here. Thank you. Have a nice day. But that can't be the end all be all.
I agree. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. You know, you mentioned um, in your responses as far as what happened to make young people not go to the polls. Why has that number decreased? Were there barriers there? And I agree with you. There had to be. There had to be. And I don't believe, at least in my lifetime, I've not seen a serious effort to gain the trust of young voters, the support. I have not seen a genuine effort in a very long time. I just haven't. And it's a lot like how when I'm speaking to some of my conservative friends who think that everybody need to vote Republican. Well, instead of going back and forth with them so much about different policies and different parts of their platform, I tell them, well, how often are Republicans coming into disenfranchised communities trying to win the vote? I've never seen Republicans come into black neighborhoods. Never, never. Democrats, they're there all the time. they knocking on doors. They coming into the churches, but Republican candidates, never. You never see them advertising things on our radio stations. Uh, any of the things that we take interest in, any of those outlets of information, they don't do it. So a large part of it is, besides the fact that we know that white supremacists find a home on that side of the political fence, but you're not even coming to minority communities sharing any policy that we could even think about. Hey, I like that policy, or I like that policy. You're not sharing any of those things. They've pretty much ignored the minority vote. They're doing nothing to earn it. So it's a shame. The Democrats, in my opinion, however, and I'll let you tack on to this. The Democrats, because they have the largest percentage of our votes, leaning towards their party, you would think that they would do more to address our concerns. Down ballot voting, I did a show on that a few days ago, and that is definitely a strategy that I'm learning that a lot of people who have no desire to vote for a president, they just don't like either one of those candidates. They are, however, utilizing that down ballot voting strategy. Ballot ready. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's something I highlighted, on one of my shows, where it people can sign up for that and get to know some of those politicians in those positions that are, um, um, you know, available, for folks to look into to vote for those, people running for those positions, and the ballot measures. In Illinois, we have the tax measure that we have to, decide on. So yeah, voting down ballot to me is what we probably should be focusing more on, because local laws affect us a lot more, a lot closer, than a lot of these federal laws. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say actually, I think the Republicans have finally caught on
Hmm.
to the Democrat strategy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's no better place to look at than Brexit,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Kanye West coming out and being friends with Trump, like, I think they're making some traction. I think they're coming around. And I see it within my own community, right? Like, I know more Latinos than I care to admit that are Trump supporters.
Mm.
And if they're not outright Trump supporters, like the ideology that he's spewing resonates with them.
Yeah.
Which is what's dangerous, right? And again, that's why when we talk about these voting blocks, we like to paint this like kumbaya picture, but it's not true. And it makes it difficult for us to address the own problems that we have in our community
Right.
that a white supremacist like that can see to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the younger side, it's like my favorite song, like "The Revolution Will Be Televised," right?
Right.
Um, and I'll admit it, like I was a Bernie supporter. And this last election cycle, I started off campaigning for Julian Castro. Was actually upset at Bernie for even running. Really would have wanted him to back up another candidate like Julian from the get-go, because that would have been so much more powerful for a candidate like that, who was the most progressive of the state aside from Bernie. Um, but then once he was out, then I switched over to Bernie. And I'm not campaigning for Biden right now, but I am campaigning for the fair tax, like you mentioned. So down the ballot races. But I think as a whole, um, like the youth vote is out there and there's definitely movements being made. Like I'm a part of this group called Justice Democrats, and this is the group that was concepted prior to AOC running for office and getting elected. And essentially, like since she got elected, they were like, whoa, what we did worked. And it worked because we were talking to the people that felt like nobody else cared about them. And they were talking straight to their issues in particular. Um, and so from that, they like branched out and now they're across the country and they have like a school branch where grassroots organizers from across the country, like myself, like we chime in onto like different Zoom meetings and calls and strategize and talk about what's working in your area, how can we replicate it and do better. And I think that the reason why it's drawn so many young people or so many people across the country is because we don't care about party. We don't care that you're a Democrat. We don't care that you're a Republican. Are you doing your job? Because when I vote for you, I'm hiring you for a job and I'm your supervisor. In community, we are your supervisor. And if obviously, if I hire you and if I give you this job for 2 to 4 years and just go, oh, I hope you do the thing that you promised me, while there's special interests constantly approaching you, while there's heavy money pushing you to sell out, like how, if you were an average worker, I wouldn't expect you to stick true to your word. Like as a politician, why would I then think that you would do it then? Right.
That's
So
right.
I think that even the best intentioned politicians lose their way if we as community don't keep checking in on them, don't hold them accountable, and also don't work with them. Like if you have a big progressive voice who's fighting for something that you love, but you don't support them by means of like advocacy and educating your community about the bills that they're pushing, if you don't call other congressmen and tell them like support or co-author this piece of legislation, like you also don't have their back and you're making it easier for them to sell out.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
so
I
I
agree.
think it's just we have to look at government and our role in government in a much bigger lens than what it's consistently portrayed as, and just vote, and that's it.
I'm with you on that, Viviana. I'm with you on that. Another question. When it comes to younger Latinx voters, like our guest who was on the show, who um, just flat out disenchanted with both candidates, what do you say to younger voters who say, you know what, Viviana, I'm just not voting for any of them. I don't like any of them. What do you say to them to try to get them to take part of this political process more?
So I in particular am like genuinely afraid that Trump has the potential to win again this election cycle. Like genuinely concerned that that's a very feasible possibility. But with that, like I'm really trying to move away from shaming people into voting, because I'm also then perpetuating the system that exists, and that the entire slogan "Vote Blue, no matter who" has definitely convinced a lot more people to not vote than what like the people who created it would have
Yeah,
hoped.
yeah, I've seen the same.
Um,
I've seen the
and
opposite effect. That, yeah,
because it's tone deaf. It's saying like, look, we know you have your problems and you're upset about this and this and that, but we don't care. We just need you to like continue in this party. Um, which you have a revolution going on within your own party where the progressives are actively yelling at you that we don't care about your party affiliation, and either you listen to us or we're out. And we've been saying this for years, and then you're gonna this is your slogan. Like I oh, it was so upsetting the first time that I heard it.
I feel you.
Um, yes, but because it just makes you feel like you're being taken for granted. Like no matter what, you're gonna show up to this abusive, toxic relationship because it's me or like the guy that's gonna send you to the hospital. And so I think that with folks like the gentleman that was also supposed to be on the show, it's like hearing him out. Like, what has caused you to lose faith? And also holding them accountable. Like, okay, you are in your right to not want to vote. I hear you if both of these candidates are bad, but what is your thought process behind not voting for anybody down this ballot? Do you know anybody down this ballot? Because you can leave that box unclicked if you so choose so. Um, but I need you to look into these Supreme Court judges that I need to make sure are good or should stay on. And then past that, like if you still don't want to vote because you believe it's legitimizing a system that you don't believe is like worth legitimizing, are you going to show up with me when we have the protest in November?
Right,
Are
right.
you going to attend my town hall on October 22nd when we're talking about bail reform? Are
Absolutely.
you going to ensure that, the people who do end up getting elected that, we ended up with because maybe folks didn't show up, are you going to help hold those folks accountable? Because if you're not willing to throw down, then I don't want to hear it.
I
I'm
heard
sorry.
that. That's
Like,
right.
it's
That's
not,
right.
I'm out here doing the legwork and you're causing more work for me, but you're not willing to help me. Like, um, no, that's not okay.
I feel you. I feel you. All right, partner. This has been great right here, Viviana. I have really just one question, and you kind of touched based on it in your last talk there. Last question: Who do you think will win the election, and why?
Um, 2016 has really taught me don't take anything for granted. And 2020 has really taught me that you can plan for everything and things can still go south. So I don't know. And that's why I'm really trying to impress on people like you can say look at the last debate and say, "Oh, see, like so many people felt this way or felt that way." Like, "Oh, see, like he got COVID and he's done a really bad job since then." I'm like, I thought that we were done with him last year when he got impeached, and it was like, "Wow, we have a president who's impeached who's still in office." Um, I thought the thing with like him only paying 750 on his taxes was gonna last longer than just it didn't even last a full news cycle actually, because then right after he got coronavirus.
You're right.
So I don't know. And I really hope that people at home understand that we don't know, and you can trust the polls so that you can sleep at night. And I don't think that's enough. So if you're just as afraid of him getting elected, um, there's plenty of phone banks for you to join or text banks. And if you feel like you're compromising your morals by campaigning for Biden, I feel it. And that's why I'm campaigning for the fair tax, which I feel like is in alignment with my values and principles, which will still turn out people more likely for him without me directly having to do that. So where there's a means, there's a way. And if you genuinely care about all these things that we've been fighting for the past 4 years, then you need to show up in some capacity. You can't just stay at home and do absolutely nothing.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Brandy in the comments section, he's like good points, good points. He's in agreement with everything that you're saying, and I would have to concur. I do as well. It's unfortunate we couldn't have the second guest on for today. I thought that overall it was a good show. A lot of insight you were able to share today with the public. Truly appreciate your opinion, your worldview on things. It's very refreshing to listen to
Thank
young
you.
folks, share their political wisdom with everyone. I think it's super important. I think more young people do need to become more politically educated, more knowledgeable and educated about civics, and more involved in the political process. And you are definitely an example of what young people should be doing. And I do greatly appreciate you coming on the show and joining us today, Viviana. I really appreciate that. All right. Well, look here,
For sure.
everybody.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, no problem. Look here, everybody. I do apologize for the technical difficulties. Brand new program that we're using on the Reset podcast, but we'll get it together. Don't worry about it. If you have any comments, any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments section. Viviana, if folks want to be able to get in touch with you, where can they find you or anything like that?
For sure. For folks who want to get involved and want to see some change in November 3rd, you can email me at Viviana, that's Viviana, at thepeopleslobbyusa.org. I would be happy to plug you into phone banks or text banks or whatever you have the time and the capacity for. And I'm also doing some lectures and information sessions on the fair tax if folks have any questions about that, because I know we've seen a lot of money poured into attack ads in the past week or two. So happy to dispel any myths around that. And yeah, so thank you.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks again. All right, everybody. With that being said, we're gonna get ready and get up out of here. Thanks for tuning in, Viviana. Stay on the line with us, and everyone enjoy your Sunday and good night.